5 or 6, I can't remember. 5, yeah.
I have to do 2 a week, otherwise I will not finish on time. So I'm at 6 tonight. It's the ladies and the uniqueness of women and the distinctives of men.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an odd thing, because in the very first instance, it's really important whether some people will concentrate or consider prestige, power, and wealth more important, while others may emphasize pleasure and survival. But that depends on your needs and values that you obviously have. But fulfillment of those things are crucial in the development of personality. It also says some needs grow out of the unique physiological and psychological natures of man, which we dealt with in the first chapter as well, in the second chapter. And women, while others as a result of one's social situation. And here comes the women's liberation movement. He says as urged by asserting that basic differences between sexes are minimal and are the result of social and economic discrimination, more specifically education and training, and therefore are not basically inherent differences. Also then says, advocates of this movement fail to recognize the social, psychological and teleological implications that result from distinctions in anatomy, physiology and emotions of male and female. And I remember the one course that I did, anthropology at the University of Western Cape, first year that I was there. That was one of the things that came up, and the class was, and the lecturer threw that at the class. And that was one of the issues. My body was created very uniquely. It doesn't fit another man's. It does fit another woman's. So just on the physiological aspect, there is this huge differences that we do not want to recognize and think that it has nothing to do with the health of society. Even children are aware of the differences in the animal kingdom, easily distinguish the sexes from the reproductive organs. It's the older child that becomes aware of the different roles of the sexes. Nowadays, children are much more aware of what's happening around them. The TV and that type of thing, media. Differences in the relation of the male and female to the offspring are very obvious in lower animals which have not learned their roles by education and training. So he throws that back at the women's league. Dr. Paul Poppernoe, I think you pronounce it like that, founder of the Medical Institute and Congratulations. Yeah. What is interesting about this lesson is that I said to one of my friends before he got married, he took the time out to go and read up on all of these things. And I think he did a very wise thing. If I look back, I think he might have failed in certain accounts in the home life still. Well, one doesn't expect someone to get it right altogether. And it came back to haunt him. So he might have read up about certain parts, but not on everything. I see a lot of men being able to move a woman, but not able to maintain that.
Oh, I see. It's easy to get them, but can you keep them?
And I think that's the problem, because we don't know all of these things. We haven't really delved into it. So yes, it's almost what it's. I think further on the lesson, or in the male one especially, they refer to the fact that when we try and woo a girl, we sometimes part on a sexual level. And there's the problem, because we're not distinguishing between what is friendship, intimate friendship, and marriage. Because intimate friendship is also something that carries over into the marriage. And it's important to establish that early on to help the marriage to go and work. Yeah, and here he gives a list of all the differences. Chromosome combinations with it. In the men and the women, obviously, you will find that. Women have greater constitutional vitality, and that is as true. Even our livers. Basal metabolism of women is normally lower, skeletal structure, shorter heads, broader faces, and that is true. The more I thought about it as I read it, I saw it actually in my mind's eye. Shorter heads, larger trunks. But that was the odd one. First finger longer than the third. Longer stomachs, kidneys, livers, appendixes.
Yeah, larger
smaller
stomachs,
lungs.
kidneys,
Yeah.
livers, and
And that's why they eat such a lot. Okay. Ooh, I'm glad he's not Wimbledon. Trying to get myself into trouble. And then obviously unique functions which relate to childbearing. They have menstruation, pregnancy and lactation, which obviously influence behavior and feelings. More hormones than a man. Same glands, but they behave differently in the two sexes. A thyroid, for example, is larger, more active, enlarges during pregnancy, more prone to coitus, provides with greater resistance to cold. Yes, I've seen that. Way more than us. And is associated with smooth skin. And a thin layer of subcutaneous fat, which contributes to greater emotional regulation, which we don't have. A woman laughs more and cries more. That is true. Blood contains more water and blood contains more water and less red cells. Yeah, that one was interesting. Therefore, less oxygen is available to body cells.
yeah.
And this condition results in quicker physical fatigue and greater susceptibility to fainting. And 8% above women in brute strength. Heartbeat is 10% faster than a man's, but the blood pressure is 10 points lower. There's less tendency to high blood pressure than men. They can stand higher temperatures than men, and their metabolism slows down less. Ours is quite fast. But that's because we're more active also.
Yeah.
Not so much. I think if I look at how my wife is busy during the day, sometimes, just with housework and stuff like that, it's a lot of work. I've also done, so I know because she worked for a year where I was off for almost 10 months. I was at home, so I would get up in the morning, I would make a breakfast, put in a lunch. When she leaves, I start with her immediately. So when she leaves 7 o'clock, I start because by 10 o'clock I want to be done. So I'm done washing and everything gets up and so forth. And then obviously I decide what I'm going to make for the evening for her. Do my prep work already. And if I can make the food in the morning, if it's still, I'll finish it while I'm busy doing the other stuff. When she comes home, it's done. And then I will sometimes go watch a movie or come back, go to the beach or come back, often follow washing, iron my heater. And it's quite a bit of work. I obviously work fast because I thought I had a better method, but I didn't do that. That would be trouble. Can stand high, okay. These differences contribute significantly to emotional and psychological difference. Ignorance of them cause conflict. There is the issue. Ignorance. In most cases, it's what causes conflict. Not necessarily only in this regard. We need to recognize who women are, how they are made up on an emotional, physical, and physiological level. But that also means on our side that there will be great acceptance if we recognize women in that manner, even when emotions and attitudes are distasteful. There's some mornings, for example, you will get up and they might be in this foul mood for no apparent reason. And you're wondering what you do. You get nothing. In fact, you don't even have to worry about it. That's just a word of advice. Let it go. Don't say anything positive. You will know. The maternal instincts and motherhood are associated with the menstrual cycle. And it's interesting, they say during this period, 50% of suicides occur during menstrual cycles. Women's crimes, there's 2 surveys, one in England, one in France. The one in England was 63%, one in France was 80%, 84%. Occurred just previous to these cycles. So, just before the menstrual cycle, oh your God, watch what you're saying. Now that you know. I always, in my discussions sometimes with my wife, I always say to her, speak to me so that I know. If I do know and I can make sense of things, and then I can work with, I can play with. But don't keep me in there. I can read about a lot of things, but I don't know what you're always feeling. I can't always read your mind. After a while, these things that you learn, somehow you just know, okay, this is it, do that, whatever. But I mean, we're not mind readers. And they mustn't expect us to be mind readers. They mustn't expect us to read between the lines. I think that is rather, that may be ignorant on their part. But you develop sometimes a sense of where she's at if you're watching, if you're alert. And it's important to be alert in the relationship. Because it also helps you understand what, when, and how. That doesn't mean that they must rule you by their emotions. So you must just play along the way she feels nowadays. No, nonsense. So there's not saying be alert. Even if it's your boss at work, and you have many female bosses nowadays, be alert of these things. You might not know what a cycle is, but it does help to watch trends and patterns and with your female companions also. Accidents, quality of school, intelligent test scores, and reflex actions are affected by the menstrual cycle. Sources of women's fatigue. Upon conception, they have to produce the tissue and minerals for two. There's menstruation in childbirth, there's loss of tissue and blood that must be replaced. If they have children too frequently, there's less time to regain their strength and their health can be endangered. After childbirth, I've had active children. I've seen them. It is tiring. Of course, a mother finds great joy in caring for her children, but the joy doesn't replace the expended energy. Managing a home is time-consuming and tiring. It's just as tiring and time-consuming as a secular job. So, never ask your woman what she was doing the whole day when you go home. She might have been ill, or she might have been extremely tired over the last couple of days when she's had a hectic period and she had to do quite a bit. When you might have to come along and play a part. The other thing is, they may also lose out on socializing because they're so busy at home with the management of the home and the kids. And that is not a good thing. We were made for each other, we were made for being social and engaging each other in the relationship. So when she loses out on that, that could also affect her. Fatigue makes a person less able to cope. You can become irritable. What my wife says, you're irritating me. I respond, no, you are irritable. I shouldn't do that. And when they're tired, they will complain and criticize those they love most. But that happens to us as well, not only to them. And it's something that we need to watch out. When they are especially tired, that might be because of that reason. And we might do the same. And that's why silence is golden. It is really golden. Keep quiet. Speak only when necessary. Dr. James F. Dobson suggests that wives think pressure as the result of busy lives and fatigue can be reduced significantly if the husband will comprehend and accept, for example, the following three ideas. Recognition of the experience itself. Human understanding is essential for proper self-esteem. We don't always respect the contribution or honor it with gratitude and even little gifts from time to time. You know what I mean? Leave something under the bed pillow in the morning when you know she's going to make it up. Leave a little gift there, let it surprise her. A little letter saying thank you. Take on some of the responsibilities for it. Sit down and discuss which task will be yours. But in their case, time off is essential for their interests. They must do things they like. That means that you might have to take them somewhere where they want to do something like, or spend time with them doing the same thing that they like. Majority of women experience this as feminine emotions. Experience recurring times of despair, discouragement, disinterest, distress, desponsiveness, and joint from the circumstances. That obviously depends on the context. The statement is based on context. When we become depressed over specific problems which arise in business and in personal and family life, but women experience a cyclical pattern of emotional ups and downs. Now that is true. Well, that's some personal experience that I'm speaking now. A lot of this information that we have in these lessons is people who wrote these books, but also use a lot of statistical info when they make the statements that they do. Highs and lows in some women are more than others, okay? Persons who understand this pattern will be able to endure depression more easily. Again, it's a case of knowing. Not only knowing, but understanding how things work, so that you are alert of where you are in the process of the thing. Emotional experience requires more physical energy, and that's sometimes why I wonder why they're so full of energy. They're still so full of energy. When emotional experience requires more physical energy, yet they're able to bounce back more easily. Emotional highs cause the adrenal glands to speed up metabolism and uses an abnormal amount of physical energy. Therefore, the body becomes exhausted, causing fatigue and depression or emotional lows. The condition is created in the body's rest and energy will be restored. Like my wife at this moment, never always loves me. I think about it, so the closest was not always. It was the best. But I've also done that. I make sure I get a minimum of 7 hours a evening because I'm so busy lately, especially this one is a busy one. Sleeping. 7 hours, and some evenings where I can get my 8 hours, I take my full 8 hours. I get home, for example, tonight. I will just go to read a little bit now, but I'll first sleep. I will be in bed. I'll go to sleep. I'll put my head down and go to sleep. Because I get home now, when it was 9, then I have another hour where I just sit quickly, read, pray, and then come back to bed. But it's important to rest. And sometimes if you know that your wife is not resting, you must create that space for her to rest. Take some of the tasks away so that she can rest. The feminine need for self-esteem, inferiority and self-doubt lead to feelings of inadequacy, lack of confidence, thoughts of worthlessness and despair. Women sometimes feel alone and wonders if anyone cares. A woman with inferior feelings experiences fear when speaking with her peers and they feel foolish afterwards, and that I've seen on occasion quite a bit. It's a group of people, but they will not always immediately share their feelings because of that complex. She may feel that she's missing out on life, no worthwhile achievements. And that is why it's important, especially in the marriage, for both of you to actually have goals. We spoke last week about the man. If you're a dad and you have a girl, the man must have a career. There must be a plan for what he's going to do because he has to provide. And I think for women also nowadays, some may choose a career, and that is what we discussed. Discuss whether they should be contributing now or whether they will be following a career path. If that is the case, then it's going to require adjustments. There might be things that they want to achieve in life, and it's important for you to know that early on. And then also help and guide them during that process to get there and to finish it actually, to achieve those things. Their needs might be different to ours, and we would want, we desire success. They might desire other things or other forms of success. But where men tend to business. Lowenstein says Viertel can threaten any member of the family, not only women. It causes persons to feel they're not respected by others. I always think of the verses in Ephesians where it's love your wives, and then it says, honor your women. Honor also means respect. Close respect. One cause of low self-esteem among women today is the meaning of the traditional role of the housewife. Like I said earlier, don't think that the contribution does not play a role. And we'll see later on how that actually does play a role. And again, I come back to my wife when I look at the way she raised this child, the last one. She had 6 years at her disposal. And I also had lots of time during that period to inject something into this young boy's life. You see, what she hands over to that boy will eventually, that effect will be felt in society. And we dismiss that contribution. Another cause of low self-esteem of women has to do with their opinion of their physical attractiveness. Guy, if she's not thinking that she's beautiful that day, especially when they pick up weight and they're struggling to lose it, be careful. That's all I can say to you, be careful. There might be medical reasons why people sometimes pick up weight. Problem with glands, that type of thing. Yes, there's medication there, but some are worse than others. So be careful during those periods where they feel unattractive because of those things. There's a beautiful verse that we'll get to later. I still can't believe that verse, but we just have to go and read it. It's in the main section. Another cause of lack of self-esteem of some women is the low opinion of the intellect of a housewife. And here we have the educated versus the uneducated. It might not necessarily be true, but even when wives are educated, and I've seen this on a lot of occasions between women and men, where men are speaking down to the woman as if they can't think for themselves, as if they can't give solid input or wisdom, as if we are the only ones who have access to that. If they are Christians like we are, then they have access to the same God, to the same Spirit. And we need to be careful that we don't grieve the Spirit in that way. Recent psychologists have concluded that personality, human growth, and happiness centered in relationships and not the person's accumulation of facts. If mankind is the climax of creation and humanness depends on social relations, then life centers in the relationships. The mother whose personality and love largely shapes the lives of her children functions in society's most important job. And now he starts dealing with that one. He's still on the causes. Some women has a lack of opportunities to develop confidence in social relations. Like I said, they are so busy that they don't really get out. And so there's not enough time to get out and meet people, to build relationships and so forth. And that can put a damper on their growth in that regard and affect their self-esteem. If the husband fails, because I've seen sometimes that my wife reads newspapers a lot, so she can hold her ground in conversations, even if she doesn't get out much, because she reads newspapers and she listens to the news a lot. She can participate. She knows what's happening in the world. And I think that's what sometimes speak to. They don't know what's happening around them. So now they get into conversations don't know that it's a span, not that it should bother them, but it's there. They're unaware of what's happening around them. If the husband fails to understand the situation of his wife, he will also likely conclude that she is limited in ability. And again, that is just due to ignorance. A lack of facts, a lack of him making effort to really know her person, her makeup. And thus will add to her feelings of inferiority, self-esteem and personal worth are strengthened when genuine respect and appreciation are shown in her role as housewife and mother. Do that. Anger and hostility are poor solutions for feelings of inferiority and inadequacy. A denied God-given nation will not eliminate feelings of inadequacy. And I love what J. Dobson says here at the end. If they, women, that is women, felt equal with men in personal worth, they would not need to be equivalent to men in responsibility. If they could only bask in the dignity and status granted them by the Creator, then their femininity would be valued as their greatest asset rather than scorned as an old garment to be discarded. Without question, the future of a nation depends on how it sees its women, and I hope we will teach our little girls to be glad when they were chosen by God for the special pleasure of womanhood. Still in the feminine need for self-esteem, women have the instinctive tendency to desire a family and a home. And again, obviously, we go back to Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Humanistic and materialistic philosophies are ignoring this innate desire of womanhood. We're suggesting higher fulfillment comes in the professional and economic spheres. The woman who admits this longing, that is, that its distinct tendency to desire family and home, should be unashamed that God made her this way. There is the need for love. Wide agreement among psychologists that love is fundamental and basic need of all people. It is strong in women, and they have a tremendous capacity for love. They have a tremendous capacity to give and receive love. The noble quality of mother love is universally acknowledged to the extent that occasional incidents which mothers do not have their children are difficult to believe. And that is funny when you hear in the newspapers, a mother leaves the child in the garbage can, or
yes.
It's an unreal thing.
It's like,
but a lot of times that also happens in extreme poverty. To get a couple possibly with a low self-esteem, what people may say, because she's not supposed to be pregnant, her status and whatever doesn't bond that. And you might have situations like that, not necessarily in a dumping can, but also in what's it? Abortion.
that's usually what I think about. What went in that happens in that person's life to actually take that step.
Yeah.
That's a big step to take.
One must be careful to judge.
Yeah.
Tim and Beverly Lilly have suggested 5 kinds of love required by women. And I think it's important to go through those 5 things. I'm not going to deal with them now. You can read that on your own.
So we're going to go to acceptance by...
There's the companionship love. Interesting to note, they say where men may become hermits, women are not prone to that. Women, it's seldom that women become hermits, or if you look at the nunneries around the world, the monastic life was often, it was men, it was mostly men who would withdraw. Even in general life, it's men who always sometimes withdraw. Women love the relationships.
There's the compassionate love, which is the second one. A woman has shown compassion for a child and husband in times of sickness and injury, anxious to do everything possible. Now don't play sick and she gets used to it and she finds you out. Then there's the romantic love, obviously. It says since women are more sentimental than men, not that sentimentality is a bad thing. They have an extraordinary need for romance. Dream of romantic occasions and tender moments. Then there's the affectionate love. I did say you can read yourself and I'm doing it. A woman desires embraces and kisses of appreciation. A tender touch in the closeness of one whom she loves is as enjoyable as the more intimate relationship. That doesn't mean that men doesn't like embraces and kisses of appreciation too, or a tender touch here and there. It might be the same for the man too, even though he's very physical in his nature sometimes. I think we tend to miss the point that men might also love to be touched constantly. They're not necessarily full-on sex. Not that I exclude touching as part of sexual activity, because sometimes we exclude it as part of sexual behavior, kissing and embracing. That's also part of the sexual experience. It doesn't have to go to the full limit for it to be a sexual experience or to bring gratification in some way. Then there's passionate love. Because of man's stronger sexual drive, passionate love is more natural and constant for him than for his wife. Hers is more periodic and affected more by fatigue and emotional distress. The woman who experienced the other four areas of love and has high self-esteem as a wife will enjoy passionate love. So you see how the one works into the other. Make sure that you give all five to enjoy the fifth one as well. It makes the fifth one a little more pleasurable for you and for her. There may be an occasional person who has such strong self-confidence that he does not need the acceptance of others. You find some people like that, but not generally. Some may be fake when they say that. That is not necessary. That can't be true. We are social beings, first of all. We desire relationship. But the majority of people are dependent upon others for emotional sustenance. Possible results of deprivation of acceptance is either they will isolate themselves and then there can be emotional disturbance. Reasons mothers with small children tend to become isolated is little time for association with peers outside the home. Self-conscious of the activities of their children, which may be annoying to others. Now, that is definitely true. There's also competitiveness. If you think that sometimes they do get out amongst their peers, and he makes the comment there that sometimes they will host little parties and so forth, and the one will start to do the other. And they may not all be by the same means. So you put pressure on the other person. There's possible resentment to those who are financially better off than. These attitudes, says Viertel and his wife, tend to isolate a person and lead to loneliness. One with self-esteem can control and minimize the isolating tendencies. Because isolation increases inferiority. When you're alone, not a good thing, never a good thing. Isolation can cause a lot of problems for you on a personal level. I think it's important to seek relationship, very important, to get out to meet new people. I don't have a problem speaking to people or chatting up people, starting a conversation. Because often I go to the beach. I say to myself, in my mind I say I want to be alone. But that is not true. Because whenever I did that, I will always find a person to speak to. And I said to myself, I was stupid anyway. That's actually what you wanted most of all today. To engage another person genuinely and for them to respond back to you.
When, yeah, okay, leave that from that day. The past roles of men and women have enabled men to be more successful in finding outside interests and activities than their wives. That is true. They are outside all the time, so they see more of life and engage in different activities. So the lack of energy and time for the mother of small children becomes largely for her not being involved in the outside world. Every person must have at least one person to care for and love him or her. Humans are social beings who must depend on each other for emotional fulfillment and stability. Sources of fulfillment. Both sexes have equal needs for self-esteem and acceptance, but they satisfy those needs differently. The housewife and mother. The housewife and mother, unlike the job-oriented husband, must do to the same and children for a sense of accomplishment. That is preparation of meals, keeping the house neat and attractive, observing the children developing to mature and worthy adults. And that is something new that I've also taken note of, especially my friends. When I went through these notes, I thought of my friends and how that particular one is important to them, satisfying the needs of a husband. While men derive self-esteem by being respected, women feel worthy when they are loved. Therefore, mothers experience greater despair when children are rebellious and fail. Criticism in public and private by a mate destroys self-confidence and dignity. Even in front of your children, go to the room. Don't have that out with them in front of the kids. Go to your room. Have it out there.
Yeah.
Even if there's other children in your home, you don't have your own kids. Respect those children.
Yeah.
Go to the room or wait till they leave.
Yeah.
But don't go at them. And that accounts for you as well. That both of you should respect each other in that way. And not destroy each other's self-confidence and dignity. And here's is the part that I love. The Mosaic law in the New Testament indicate the well-being of the wife is the responsibility of the man. Look what Deuteronomy 24:5 says. Cheer up his wife that he has taken. Interesting, eh? Ephesians 5:28. Men are to love their wives as part of themselves, since a man and his wife become one. Your love for yourself should be equal to the love that you give your wife. Your husband is to care for his wife as his own body, just as Christ cares for his body, the church. And the wife is to respect, obey, and praise her husband. Women must also take responsibility for strengthening the relationship with her husband and thus lay the foundation for her own fulfillment. When problems do occur in the home and the wife does not play a full or complete role, then you are responsible for the initiative in correcting problems. When you see it happening, sit down and talk. Don't let things get out of hand. A few years later you discover, listen, but this is not the way it should be. When you notice it early on and you didn't do anything about it. Because then you become as responsible as well. Remember, you're the head of the home, you're leading. It's your job to take notice to see what's going on. When things are changing, when things are developing in a route or in a way that it's not supposed to. Those are the challenges that you'll always have to face. One of the things that they don't deal with in this lesson is the aspect of what we call development. People develop differently, even in marriages. The developmental stages for that, people might not be exactly the same. What I experience when children leave the home might not be what my wife is experiencing. Or the experience might not be immediate. So it's little things that happen along the way that causes a lot of changes and calls for a lot of adjustment. Like we said, prepare for adjustment early in the marriage, prior to the marriage, prepare for adjustment. Because obviously you're going to discuss things then already, long before the time. Make the adjustments then, so that you've learned and practiced how to do that.
So Jesse, you just come for the second half.
Okay. Conclusion. Women and men are neither inferior nor superior to each other. They are simply different creations. Women's roles are not inferior to those of a man. Women make greater contribution to happiness in the areas of acceptance, work and love than men do. And that is true, and that you need to remember. Especially if your wife is going to be a homemaker and there's children involved. The contribution that she makes in that home in areas of acceptance, work and love, in raising and disciplining and training those children, are greatly to be admired and recognized and rewarded. You must find ways to reward it. Be creative. It is interesting that men are instructed to be the religious leaders in their home, but women usually provide more spiritual influence. And you will see that in the next lesson why he says that. Man did not need another man to be a helper, but a woman who was fitted to his needs. Adam exalted when he beheld Eve, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. She is created in the image of God, something special. She has capacities for sensitivity to another's need, for genuine love, for self-giving and for understanding. Her daughters bear in nature in her likeness. Her body has been given by God special creative powers as she bears children. Her capacity to love and establish relationships with others are replicas of the divine nature. Always see the image of God in her, and I think that is the key. When we see the image of God, we see potential. And that potential must be harnessed, must be nourished, must be fed. Adam's desire and need for women were answered in the nature of Eve. Women was made with desires to be needed. Her desire to be needed is the basis of a unique love. The giving of herself and meeting the needs of her husband and children. Because women are at the best when crisis threaten their husbands and children. They function best when they are needed. She wants to be needed. I think all of us have that sometimes.
To a degree, yeah. I think we all. A man also wants. It's important for a man to feel appreciated for what he's doing.
Yeah. Although the man was designed by God to carry the responsibilities of providing and leading of the home, his success or failure in these responsibilities depend on the wise counsel and loving support of his companion. And this which he also plays a major role. If he is an unwilling and incompatible mate, no amount of financial success can bring fulfillment to his life. If he cops up when things become difficult, his courage to try again is shattered. As the Ruth Hampton has said, the most influential position in the nation today is held by a woman. She enforces law, practices medicine, and teaches without degrees, certificate of competence, or required training. She handles the nation's food, administers its drugs, and practices emergency medical aid. This for all the spiritual, physical, and mental ills of the American family. A man literally places his life and the lives of his children in the hands of a woman, his wife. Everything praise, strength, firmness, steadfastness, and unwillingness to be reflected in the deep peace, poison, and beard. It's an English attitude of manliness which affects your character. You'll see men just stand differently, their stances are different in their movements of head and body. And they usually develop abilities which require masculinity, such as skills to be a carpenter, bricklayer, plumber, or farmer. It is just focus on those few words, one which is firmness, and determination is closely related, so they will go together hand in hand. And the key thing here is that they don't succumb to pressure in the face of fear when it comes to firmness, and the determination at the same point, which it says, men do not give up, quit, relinquish, or surrender under pressure as readily as women. They follow their conditions despite the risk of criticism or possible failure. Look, it is sometimes, like we said earlier, be wise as servants. Don't forget that.
I don't forget that one.
Be wise as servants and
Tame stuff.
tame as doves. Use the qualities of courage. It enables man to meet dangers and difficulties with firmness and strength. I can remember once. Do what they should regardless of the danger involved. In the presence of strong female and virile men, when women feel most strongly their femininity, the masculine traits of men have psychological effects on both men and women. Yeah. And I've seen that when the big guy comes in with the muscles, all the women turn. Well, not all of them, most turn. Independence. Usually every effort is made to be self-sufficient in earning their livelihood. There's attempts to solve their own problems, less expressive in personal matters. And this is a danger actually, because sometimes that causes them to work in isolation. They isolate themselves. Another danger, and he looks at that later, so let me not raise it now. Number 5, which is the fact that they strive for success. Because of the pleasure that comes to men through masculine achievements, they strive for success. Inherited wealth does not produce the same sense of fulfillment. If you look at athletes, for example, there's this masculine traits of physical endurance and ability, which is admired by people. And this is the funny part I was sitting and laughing at, because we the spectators, says Viertel, participate vicariously in the events they watch, as if we were there, as if we have achieved the same thing. Yes, we're urging him on, but it's almost like we achieved it too.
Yeah.
So we participate in that way, and make it our own. So the fulfillment that he feels as an athlete, the success that he's just managed, it's almost like we've had the same experience. Men have an innate desire to achieve something of merit and to be productive. This pride in manliness is essential for the preservation and progress of the family. Overemphasized or perverted manliness can be disruptive to the individual's psychological health and the harmony of society. A frustrated male ego can be hostile and even uncontrollable. When present the implication that they are effeminate, wives imply that their husbands are deficient in any trait which is distinctively masculine, will erect barriers to communication and relationship. When a woman tells a man that he's failed, that is the worst thing she can do to him. If she tells him he's a failure, men are sensitive to ridicule, contempt, and criticism. They become quiet, unapproachable, and withdrawn. In worst case scenarios, there will be substance abuse and even immorality. His responses to the beauty of life, the laughter of his children, and the love of his wife becomes diminished, becomes less and less. It becomes almost oblivious to what is happening around him when he becomes, or is made small, or he feels small. And all of the things that is supposed to be of worthy, they lose that worth. The aggressive nature of males. Men may show their need for mastery in relationship to women by attempting to be intellectually superior and being sexually aggressive. The aggressive nature of males is even obvious in children. They say systems may seldom fight, and girls of different families even seldom fight. However, boys are engaged in scuffles and fisticuffs. If you watch boys, they're always busy tagging and grabbing each other. Somehow there will be something which is physically involved between boys. Few women engage in professional fighting. And young boys, the one came along, the one said something to the other, and the one got off his bicycle, spat in this boy's face, smacked him through the face. And I think they were 10 years old, not even 10 years old. And there was this aggression. Now it could be that he was witnessing this aggression at home and he'd been taught to be that aggressive also. But you'd seldom see that from girls. They would say little nasty things to each other and so forth, but they would seldom raise their hands in a fight. Boys form gangs that attempt to dominate competitors. The aggressive, dominating and competitive nature of males is reflected also in lower animals, by the way. Females may fight, but they do not seek to establish dominance. You don't want to see females fight. Their way of establishing dominance is to, what is the word? They want the other person to feel shame when they're done with it. They want to leave them in shame. It's another form of dominance, but it's terrible seeing people fight. I've seen it twice in my lifetime. Once in Manenberg, both in Manenberg. There was a lady in our road, I had a fight with another lady. And then at the flats I saw two girls. And what they literally do is, they will start undressing each other.
Okay.
So that the other person may be shamed before other people. It's a different type of fight.
It's a different fight.
More related to protecting the young. When they do fight, it's more to protect the young or the getting of food. The aggressive nature of the male is related to his sexual drive. His emotional response to the female is immediate. And that is true. Our emotional response when it comes to the sexual drive is immediate. Women's, we are generalizing now again, but the females again is not. It's periodic. Although the human mental and psychological capacities modify men's instinctual drives, men continue to have some of the traits of lower animals. The sexual impulse is essential for the propagation of the race, however, and is basic to the relationship of man and woman. However, the sexual impulse can lead to immorality and crime if not controlled. Men's externality, and this was quite some interesting reading. Jacob Moreno, a psychiatrist, emphasized the importance of encountering social relationships. And then you have been joined by Martin Buber, who defined the personal encounter as an I-thou concept. There's also the I-it concept, obviously. The I-thou concept relates to one person with another person, while the I-it concept relates to one person to an object. And in males sometimes, because of their natures and their makeup, they tend to the latter, which is the I-it. And that's why they have difficulty sometimes in relating to God. Buber followed an idea stated by Feuerbach in Principles of the Philosophy of the Future, which holds that an individual person does not have his being in himself, either as a moral being or a thinking being. Rather, personality only exists in community, in the unity of a person with person. He concluded that the person is incomplete as an individual. He is not a personality in isolation. It's impossible for you to be a person in isolation. That's impossible. After he created man, he found that there was no suitable world for him.
Yeah. That's after he did animals.
Yes. After he created animals.
So pet doesn't do it.
No, it doesn't do it, man.
A pet's nice, but doesn't do it.
The only thing is they're consistent. They will wag their tails consistently and never fight with you. Never talk back to you. Rather, personality only exists in community. Nor does he find his fulfillment by submerging himself in the collective mass of the crowd, like we sometimes do in large churches. You know, we get lost in the crowd.
Yeah, you get lost in the crowd.
It doesn't work then.
No.
Real life is in meeting, a life of relationship that gives meaning to life. Life centers in relationship. The other person is never an object, because when that person is an object, that also by the same token means separation. There's distance. An I-thou relationship is a living and mutual experience, and fulfillment is experienced only in relationship to another person. God is a person with whom human beings establish an interpersonal relationship. They say one reason why women may be more religiously inclined is a nature to find fulfillment in being and relationship. Maybe that's why we find such a lot of women in church, because they understand relationship more than we do. The I-it is not such a problem for them. Man tends to externality, which causes his relationship to God to be less natural for him. He doesn't necessarily deny God's existence, but his natural tendency is to treat God as an object rather than as a being vitally involved in his daily activity. Like someone once said to me, in the evening when you pray, then tell him about your day, because you're in relationship with him. Tell him all the details of the day. You're in relationship. Don't forget that. And we tend not to pray that way sometimes. If we're in relationship, then that is part of what the prayer is. We talk about our deepest emotions, our longings, our fears. We're not scared to give expression to them or to God, because this is a relationship. God is a person. Man's externality results in part from his social position as head of the home and leader in society. Therefore, he considers himself independent and self-sufficient. And that is often the reason why you find what we call self-made men. They think they've arrived. I did it my way. That's how the song goes, eh? I did it my way. Roles of men. Societies usually assign roles to males and females. These roles generally correspond to their masculine or feminine traits. Even with industrialization, men still conceive of their roles as provider and protector of their home. Even though Mel and I worked, I never saw myself as less as a provider and protector of the home. Women seeking employment to supplement the income for the family, they've assumed the role previously assigned to men. The problem with this now is, especially with the high rate of divorce, women are now providers and protectors for the one-parent family. You must never compare. How does the Pope listen around and say? There will always be those that are better than you.
Yeah, that's
always. Whether in sports or in business, it will always be and somebody with natural ability. So,
don't compare.
Yeah. As soon as you compare, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And if you teach your children to compare, or they come home and say, my buddy has this, teach him to value what he has. Teach him to value that you worked for this thing and this is how it was attained. If he let him life decide but he wants more, then you tell him, listen, you need a job to go and do that, to get all of those things that you think you need. But actually want. You need to teach him the difference between wants and needs. Man's externality results in part from his economic role and nature of his business relations, which causes him to establish less personal relationships. I wrote down these circles and squares. We did this little course at work where it says that in the workplace, they explain that where there's the I-it relationship, because things are objects, things need to get done. And men tend to do that while women work with the relationship to get people to do what they need to do. The man might think of it very differently. That is not always true, because you get different types of personalities. If you've seen it, the 4-block personality, some people tend to be just doers, some people tend to be a little pragmatic, some tend to be thinkers, and then there's the one that's in between, the pragmatic thinker, the doer and the thinker at the same time. I tend to be between there. But then your circumstances can also determine a different response. So that it's not necessarily what they say your personality is supposed to look like. The context might make me a doer. So, even though I'm a thinker. Yeah, that's on another level. Now, there's the I it, which is at work. Now he comes home, now he must do an I thou. He must swap now. And they're not always able to do that. Now, circles and squares is just another form or argument of it. It says, when I'm at work, I'm listening, I'm speaking with a round mouth and a round ear. So everybody understands. Because it's a round mouth and it fits into the round ear. I get home with my round mouth and my round ear. When my wife speaks, she's speaking with a square mouth that doesn't fit. Right. Okay. Roles of men. Societies, they usually assign males and females. These roles usually correspond to their masculine or feminine traits. And then, even with the industrialization, things have changed. One parent is now supporting, and a lot of times it's women that's on their ass doing that. Sorry, man, I just went back to that part because I forgot to just highlight it for you. Some tasks can be done equally well by men and women. Others can be done better by women, and vice versa. Some areas in which men and women usually have greater interest than the other does. Men, science, mechanical, sports, women, more religion, arts, domestic arts. It says man is usually assigned the role of initiating and developing a relationship with a woman because he is considered inherently aggressive and she attractive. It is characteristic in human relations for the female to attract the male as well. It may be looking at attraction in that particular issue and how we attract each other very differently. Ordinarily, women are more careful in dress and appearance than men. If you go into a girl's room and a boy's room, you might find it shows up a difference
a lot tidier.
in the way they assume their roles. So just go and view the respective bedrooms. Also very important when you get married is maybe have the chance when you have the girls on, if you go to the toilet, you know where your room is, just speak quickly and see how it looks. It will give you an idea what your home might look one day like. And vice versa. If she peeks into your room, she might also have an idea of whether you are tired and how our own love is going to look and the possibilities of you two having a tiff with things that matter to her and doesn't matter to you. Like a clean kitchen might bother a male, but not a female. I can do that maybe tomorrow because depending on her personality, she could try and she doesn't feel like doing it. And now it freaks you out, but it doesn't freak her out. It freaks you out, go do it yourself.
Yeah, that's my mission.
The woman's careful personal attractiveness and tidiness appeals to man, and that is true. I think, especially Meryl, when she saw me the first time, one of the things that she said to me later on, the first thing that I looked at you is whether your nails were clean and cut. What a thing. Imagine my nails were not clean. It would have been a no, straight.
Yeah.
She was interested in me being neat and tidy.
Yeah.
Which is was something I was looking for in her, but she was also looking for it in me. So what is necessarily true for one might be also true for the other. That's why I think some of these are generalized.
According to a lot of
some men go beyond it because they want to not only finish it, they want to win it. While women usually desire to be conquered with gentleness and strength, God has made their natures to blend together again. God has made their natures to blend together. Submission of the wife is fulfillment in the one flesh relationship with the husband. Not always viewed like that by the women's liberation movement. They think it's the husband dominating the wife. Well, we say it is not. It is the way God ordained things for the home. Not only that, it was born out of sin also. If we go back to Genesis chapter 3. But that doesn't mean that it's sin itself. An order was created for the family. She doesn't experience emotional and psychological fulfillment if she becomes the dominant person in the relationship. She needs to feel her husband's strength in taking care of her, and the husband needs to exert his strength in caring for his wife. A man is never sure how he should express his urge for mastery in relating to a woman. Yeah, that is true. For the man to initiate an intimate friendship without barging on the sexual level means taking risks and becoming vulnerable. You see, before the marriage, the experience of intimate relationship, as I said earlier to you, is important. Drawing from each other the strength and encouragement each has to give, other than on the sexual level, is missing from many marriages. That's why when you start out, the first thing to look for is not the sexual part. It's not supposed to be part of the relationship. It's to look to developing an intimate friendship. Because in marriage, that is going to carry you. That intimacy, that friendship between the two of you is what's possible to carry you. That's what you need to work and to grow all the time. You and your wife need to be friends. Man leads the helpmate whom God created. Woman becomes the object of his emotion, his companion in marriage and in parenthood. 3 ways in which man needs to exert his manliness is expressed either through protecting the family, providing for them, and also the courage that comes from the loyalty and devotion of wives and children who depend on him. There is a new idea that follows, where Viertel says man is incomplete without a wife, as a companion with whom to share his dreams and aspirations, and vice versa. He wants to be respected above all other men. If your wife makes more of another man, jealousy might be an outcome. It's a big possibility that it will bring about jealousy. When you make more of something than God, there's the same response. There's jealousy. God is a jealous God. He will not have any other way.
There will be no other gods before you, but we.
Respect her above all women. He does not want a relationship of manipulation and domination unless he is an emotionally disturbed person. Only emotionally disturbed people wants to manipulate and dominate, because the understanding of relationship is skewed. They do not know how to give and take. He wants a person of whom he can be proud as she exercises her own unique abilities in life. He does not desire to use her as a servant in his own pursuit of success, but rejoices when he can help her attain the goals. Man was made for companionship and cannot achieve supreme joy apart from it. New idea. A man needs to feel that he has fulfilled his wife's sexual needs. It's important for us to do that, to know that we satisfy our wives. Illicit sexual relations are never fully satisfying. Anything outside of marriage is temporary. It can never satisfy what you have inside of marriage. Never. The woman who believes that it does not matter to her husband, or let me go back to the last one again. When I say illicit sexual relationship, that is on a physical and emotional level. And don't make a distinction, they are the same thing. When you are emotionally involved with another woman, it doesn't require the sex part. It's you are being
Unfaithful. That's
Unfaithful.
Yeah.
Whether on an emotional or physical level, if you are being unfaithful. And it can satisfy you. It's temporary. It's that it. Look, let's be honest. We look around. We sometimes see something that we like. And it does happen and it can occur, especially when there's a period in our lives where the relationship is not so good. We may tend to look somewhere else. And then try and find what we're not getting here somewhere else. We might not necessarily go over to the physical, but it's the same thing. Do not classify it as something different. The woman who believes that it does not matter to her husband whether she responds and experiences joy in their relationship does not understand. A man wants to know that his wife has enjoyed the sexual experience and that she enjoys him as a partner in the bed. It's important for a man to know that. If a man fails in his attempt to fulfill his wife, he experiences a deep sense of failure. His own image of himself as a man suffers. His control of all others areas of marriage will be hindered. He feels inadequate and defensive at times. Numerous writers have observed that nations fall when homes deteriorate. When loyalty and respect disappears, men have no incentive for exerting their manly strength. Man needs woman for his strength and nature to experience fulfillment. Again, which is the last point. Not there's two more points. Christian moral standards for men. Christianity does not permit a double standard. One man, one woman. Now, in the Old Testament, it wasn't always so, and that pattern was also true of other cultures at the time for polygamy. But the Bible doesn't support that view. Again, male sexuality, our response is immediate, our response is more periodic. Since man is of a higher social nature, he is not to be controlled by his instinctual drives, although they are an essential part of his being. You must remember he's not an animal. He is God's creation, and he needs to control what's happening in his life. As a responsible human being, he must join his mate in concern for the well-being of the offspring rather than leaving their sustenance and training to the woman. He forms part of the home, every aspect of the home. He must join her, and she must join him. The Christian requirement for monogamy is not based on institutional drives and emotions, but on man's social and spiritual natures. The Christian requirement for monogamy is based on love, good of society, and the will of God. The good of society. 3 results of an uncontrolled or self-controlled man losing perspective, or he becomes unfaithful to his wife. His pride leads to arrogance, and he becomes unfair and dishonest. Just if ever you've had a friend who's involved in a relationship outside of his marriage, take note. He becomes dishonest.
Yeah.
He will not be honest with you with regards to his feelings. He will even be so arrogant as to support what he's doing, yet while he's staying in the marriage. He'll be able to try and convince you that he's doing the right thing. His tendency to be independent and self-reliant will cause him to ignore his creator and neglect his companion. Characteristics which were designed to make life whole and happy can be perverted into destructive forces. Last part, failure. If a man fails, it could lead to substance abuse and tyranny in the home. He becomes animalistic in his activities. He becomes base. Remember, he's distancing himself now from God. It's a I eat. It's no longer an I thou. The man who is controlled by his creator expresses his true nature and purpose. In his sexual nature, which gives him drive, ambition, love for a companion, and desire for children, and also in the pride which causes him to provide well for his family. If a man's instinctive characteristics are at the disposal of his selfish and lustful nature, they will become instruments of Satan. For the man who invites Christ to control his life,
His distinctive traits add to his own fulfillment and contribute to the well-being of his family. When distinctive traits are properly expressed, they benefit society and equip man for his role as head of the home. The Lord bless you and keep you.
Thank you.